Hello, hello, everyone. Hope you're all having a fabulous Wednesday today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and give it just a couple of minutes here. To introduce myself, though, my name is Brandy, and I am the support director here at Details Flowers. I also have my co-host here, Olivia, who's going to be manning the chat. So if you guys have any questions or anything, you can always put those questions in the chat. If this is your first tips and tricks webinar with us, the way that it kind of will go is I will go ahead and get started here shortly on going through our topic, which today is going to be the form builder. And once I complete that process, then at the very end, we're going to have an open Q&A session. So if you have any questions, you can wait and ask them at that point, or of course, you can also put them in the chat there. We may answer them as we go, depending on what they are and at what point of the webinar we're at. Otherwise, we'll save them all until the end. I do ask that everybody just keeps their microphones off during our webinar today. And then, of course, when we get to that Q&A portion, if you want to take your microphone off to ask a question, you can do so at that point. At the end of our webinar, we normally do create a recap email, and we'll send that out to everybody. So if you miss anything, or if you want to rewatch it at any point, you're welcome to do that as well. And then we'll also include during our webinar today, Olivia is going to put a couple of different links to our support center there in the chat. So if you guys want to check those out, you can do that as well. So I'm going to give it just another minute here to see who joins, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I hope anybody that participated in Mother's Day has also recuperated from that. I know it's always a busy holiday, so I hope that everyone who did participate had a fabulous time and has now recovered. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we're going to get started. All right, so first and foremost, like I said, today's topic is going to be the form builder. Some of you may already have the form builder and just want to learn a little bit more about it. And then others maybe not have seen it at all. So we're going to kind of start from the beginning. This is going to be your form list. To get to this area, you're going to go to the main menu within your account, and you're going to see an option that says form list here in your main menu. That's going to take you over to a page that looks just like this. Your very first time that you come to this page, if you haven't created a form yet, it will be blank. But at the point that you create your first form, you're going to see a page that looks very much like this. It'll have all of these different columns of information here as well. All right, so first thing in the upper right-hand corner is going to be our menu button. This is where you're going to be able to create a custom domain. For anyone who doesn't know, Details does offer custom subdomains that you can purchase. Basically, what that is going to do is it's going to change out the link that you provide to your client in order to Rosemary, I'm happy to assist you if you want to reach out at support@detailsflowers.com after the webinar. So there is going to be where you can get your own custom subdomain. And then right here is going to be where you're going to click to create your first form or another form if you've already got some created. On this box here, you're going to have a series of different options, the first of which is going to be your form name. So personally, I like to generically name my forms. So I would name it something like wedding intake form, or just wedding or intake form in general. So however you want to name that, depending on what type of form you're creating. In today's class, we're going to be doing an intake form, but you can make forms of all kinds. Options are pretty much limitless in that aspect. So for today, I'm going to name this tips and tricks. Right below that, you're going to see two toggle buttons. One is going to be to make your form active. And the other is going to be to automatically create an event. So the first toggle, I'm going to go ahead and toggle that to yes. That's going to make my form active there. And then the other toggle is going to also get set to yes for our presentation today. But basically that means that if you want an event to automatically be created from a form submission when somebody fills out your form, and then also fill in specific information to the event so that, all of their like client contact information, basic information about the event, like locations, times, things like that. You want that to automatically populate into your event. You'll go ahead and click that create event. If you don't want that to happen and you just want them to fill out the form, let's say you're doing like a feedback survey or something like that, you may not want to create an event from that, of course. So the next tab is going to be our advanced tab here. The first option is going to be if we want to allow for multiple submissions. What this means is that if I come to your form and fill out your form, am I supposed to be able to come back and fill that out again at a later date? Like if I'm doing, let's say, an anniversary party after I had done a wedding with your company a year ago, do I want to be able for my client to come in and fill that form out multiple times? If you're doing an intake form, probably you're going to want to put this to on. If you're doing a different kind of form, you may not want to have that on. Down below that is going to be an open and close date. For me, since I'm doing an intake form, it's something that's going to live on my website and just continuously exist there. I'm going to go ahead and put an open date of today, but I'm going to leave the close date empty because I don't really have like a date in which this is going to end. Below that, I can also have it automatically create an event name for that event that I'm automatically creating from my submissions. So I can type in a generic name here, but I can also utilize what we call tokens. So for anyone who's not familiar with tokens, basically it's going to be a bracket of information that's going to pull specific data from your event. What I mean by that is, for example, my client's name. So if I want to go ahead and put in client name, and that's going to be my token. And what that's going to do is now every time an event is created from a submission here in the form, it's going to put my client's name or that client's name in as the event name. You can see all of the available token options by clicking on this personalized button here in the top right-hand corner of this field. Or Olivia is also going to put in a link to that article here in the chat, so you can go ahead and read through that at your leisure as well. So for right now, though, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it as client name. And then I'm going to hit that save button at the bottom. So in here, you have the option to either start from scratch and build your form completely from the ground up, or you can also start with one of our template options. Each person is going to start off with two different template options. So you're going to have a wedding intake form option, and then also a general intake form option. So the wedding intake form is obviously going to have more questions that are geared specifically towards weddings, whereas the general intake form is just going to be an overarching intake form. So it's going to ask you if you want to start from scratch or if you want to start from a template. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and start from a template and hit that start button. It's going to prompt me to select which intake form or which template I want to go ahead and load. So I'm going to go in and do this wedding intake form here and load that template. So this template is going to pull in your logo automatically. You can kind of see here, and we did this strictly for the purpose of showing you, I have a company logo that I have with a white background. So if I already have a background on my form, like this marble background, and this is what comes standard in this specific template, it's going to stand out the way that this logo does right here. I recommend that if you're going to do a background that you go ahead and make your logo and remove the background from it. That way it kind of just will float there, if you will. Or of course, you can also change out your logo if you want it to be more in line with the background itself. You can put a background that matches it. All right. The first thing that I would recommend after you load in your template is to get started in the upper right-hand corner on the menu. In the menu, you have a series of different options. The first is going to be load version. This is going to be very similar to the load version option that you have on the worksheet. Each time you save a version of your form, it's going to live there in that load version option. So if you ever need to go back and forth between your versions, you can do that here. The load template option is going to be kind of like what we just saw, where you're going to be able to select a template. Also very similar to the load template aspect on the worksheets if you're familiar with that option. But if you have a template that you've previously saved and you want to load it in, you can do that here. You can also decide that you want to start over with a blank form. So if you load the template, maybe you don't like it, you want to go ahead and just start from scratch, you can load a blank form. Also, if you've made a bunch of different edits and then you decide, I just really want to start over from scratch, you can do that as well. But the last option here is going to be your form defaults. So we're going to go ahead and click in that. And this is going to bring up a modal where you can select all of the different form defaults. Starting up at the top left is going to be your default font. So you can click on that to select your font for your form. It does start off with the Lato. That's going to be the same font that's on your proposal as a default. So if you want that to be more uniform with what you have on your proposal, you can do that as well. Also, if you've selected a different font on your proposal and you want to keep that uniform, you can select it from the options here. They're the same options that we have on our proposal area. In addition, you've got all of these different color options. So on the left, you have your picker default. So these are going to be things like your date picker and your time picker. And you can select the primary color for that. Also on the right-hand side is going to be your button navigation. So that's going to be your submit button or your next page button that will show at the bottom of your form. Your input defaults, which will be the field itself where your client is going to actually type in their information. So if your field is first name, it's going to be where they actually type their name. And you can change out the background of that field and also the text that they use. And then you have your page defaults. So you're going to have an area where you can select a background color. So in this case, I'm using a background image already, so I'm not going to use the background color. But you can definitely go over there and change out your background color. And then you also have your text color. So this is going to be your label text, if you will. So where it says first name as your label, that will be that text color here. You also have some padding options. If you want to add padding to the top or bottom of your form, you can do that here as well. In the component defaults, you're going to be able to play around with your borders. So if you want to change out your border style or where that lives, you can do that as well. And then you also have some additional padding options and margin options. Here in your minimum height, it's going to default to 32, but this is going to be the height of your sections itself. So for example, if I want to have thicker sections, I can up that height, or of course I can also choose to make them thinner. Once you finish with that box, it is going to have two questions for you to answer, one of which is going to be, would you like to apply these settings to existing pages? And then the other is going to be, would you like to apply these settings to existing components? These two boxes are going to be very important if you've loaded in the template. The reason for that is that if you've made changes on your defaults, you're going to want to update all of the existing pages and components that were already there because of the template itself. All right, next is going to be any of these sections here at the top. So it does start off with a heading. It will say wedding intake form. Of course, you can edit this to say whatever you'd like. For any one of the components, if you want to edit them, you're going to hit this little, what I like to call a DJ board. Kind of looks like a DJ board here. And that's going to bring up a modal for you to make changes. So right here is where you're going to change out that heading verbiage. You can also change out what the heading or excuse me, what heading style you choose. The alignment, so if you want that to be centered, left or right. Title case, so if you want the first letter of each word to be uppercase. And then also you have an area here for a background image. If you already have a background image on your form, you may want to leave this blank, or you may also want to choose a background that's going to lay on top of your background, kind of up to you. Then of course you also have a general area here. This is all of the modals for each one of these components are going to be set up exactly like the defaults for the form. The reason for that is that you can have your overarching defaults, but then if you want to make changes on a per component basis, so maybe I just want this specific component to have a border, you're going to be able to change that here as well. And then, of course, down here, right below that is going to be text. It's just some generalized text. So, of course, you can also change that. However, if you do plan to maintain this text, you'll want to go in and edit where it says your company here and just rename that to whatever your company is. So. All right, so going down, let's go ahead and talk about the different types of components that you have here on your form. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom for this. And at the very bottom, I'm going to click where it says add new element. And this is going to allow me to see all of the different options that I have for components. So those options are going to include checkboxes. So if you have like a series of different options that they can pick from, and you want to click on any of those options or multiple options, you can use the checkbox. You have a color selector where your client is going to be able to select the colors for their event. This color selector is going to be the exact same one that we have on our worksheet. So what you guys will normally use there on the worksheet is going to be the same thing for your client. They'll be able to go in there and pick their own colors. Columns, so this is really just a formatting component. So it's going to look like this. So this is a column, and it allows me to put multiple components into each column. And then I have a company logo field. So that's the one that if you're using the template will default there at the top. And then your date picker, so your client can pick out like the date that they want their bouquet to be dropped off, let's say, or maybe they want to put in their date for the event itself. They can go ahead and do that. Heading option, so we just saw that. That was where I went in to change out where it said your company name. An image, so that's going to allow you to add images here onto the form itself. So if you want to give, like, let's say examples of different styles or examples of previous things that you've created, you can go ahead and put an image there. Input box is going to be the most generalized component option, and we'll look at that in just a moment. But it's going to be things like your first name field. It's going to be things like, let's see, your phone number, anything like that. The select multiple is where they can go in and select from a series of different options here. Select one is they'll get all of those options, but they're only going to be able to select one of them. A text is going to be just a freestanding entry text box. I've used these on the template to basically break out the different sections so that I've got a little explanation of what I'm looking for in each section. Like in this section, you'll fill out all of your contact information. So it'll be things like their first name, last name, phone number, email address, stuff like that. Then you also have a text area where they're going to be able to fill in multiple lines of information. So for example, I have a question that I want to say is, what kind of personal items do you want to include in your event? And it's a free entry box where they can put in a lot of information. Also, what's the overall feeling you're looking for your event? I would use a text area box. And then, of course, you have your time input where they're going to be able to select their times. What time is your ceremony starting? What time is the end of your ceremony? What time are we going to be able to get in there and start setting everything up? So any of those times that you want to add in there. All right, so going back up to the top, we'll go through some of these different options. The first is going to be your input box. And like I said, this is going to be the most versatile. It's going to have the most options here. So first, you're going to want to select your input type. So that can be text, email, phone number, US phone, and then also a URL. Each one of these is going to have a series of different mapping options, which we'll go over in just a second. You have your field name, which is going to be the internal name for that field. So maybe on the front facing for your client, you want it to say your name, but maybe on the back, you just want to put name or client name, something like that. You can also choose if you want this field to be a required field or not. On the template, there are a series of different fields that are required. Email is always going to need to be required. Every form is going to have an email option on there. Then there's also, I want to say, the phone number, your name, the event date. Those more important fields are going to be required. The placeholder area is going to be that kind of blanked out text that you see inside of the fields itself to kind of explain more of what you're looking for in that area. And then you have your layout options. So on the template, each one of our different components is laid out with a side-by-side, meaning that it's going to be your label on one side, and then right next to it is going to be the field that they're going to put their information in. However, you also have a stacked option. So I'm going to go ahead and select that so we can see it in action. But the stacked is going to be where the label is up top, and then the form for them to fill out their information is right below that. On that option, you do have a center label toggle here. So if you want that label to be in the center of the field, or if you want that to be aligned left, you can leave it to no. All right, and then here's the fun part. So if you have it set up to where your form is going to automatically create an event in details when a client fills it out, you're going to have this option that's set value as. And what that means is where you're going to map that information to. So for example, this is a your name field. So I'm going to map that into the client's first and last name, contact name here. But you have all of these available options to map to. This is just the options for that text option. But if I was to change my input type to, let's say, US phone, my options get a little bit smaller. I've got those 2 phone number options there that live on the client info page. I can do it as a form response only, which means that it's going to live on the response, but it doesn't map anywhere. And then I can also choose to make that into an event custom property. If anyone is not familiar with custom properties, I highly recommend that you go through and learn a little bit more about that. Olivia, if you can find the article actually for custom properties and put that right there into the chat for everyone. But custom properties are a really great catch-all for anywhere that you don't have a hard-coded field. So for example, the best example that I like to give is going to be if I have a URL field, meaning I want their Pinterest board link, or maybe they're sending me a Google Drive with a bunch of different photos that they have in there, or maybe it's their wedding website and they want to give me access to view that whenever I want to. They can go in and you can set it as a URL input type, and then you can make that into an event custom property. That will live on the details page of the event, and it will be a live link to allow you to click directly into their Pinterest page or their wedding page or whatever it happens to be. So great option there. And actually, Ty, I want to say that your question kind of falls in line with this. So Ty said, will there be an option for image upload field? So right now, we don't have any form of like data plan that would allow you to add, or excuse me, rather your customer to add in unlimited amount of photos, if you will. So that would be required in order for us to have a like upload file option here on the form. However, this option is a great alternative. So kind of like what I was saying is you can have your client make out a full Pinterest board, and then they can link that here in their form. Same thing with a Google Drive. So if they've got a bunch of different inspiration photos and they want to send that off to you, put it in a Google Drive or a Dropbox or anything that's like link based. And then you can have a field that says Dropbox link, and they can put the URL there, or, you know, for Google, if they want to do the Google Drive link. So not directly tie, but yes, you can do it as a URL field and they can put a link there. So as long as they have it saved in like a link-based aspect, they can do it there. All right, and then kind of like what I was saying earlier about each component also having its own options to have specific text and field colors. You're going to have those options down here at the bottom. So while the rest of your form may be all black labels, and that's the font color that you've chosen, maybe this specific one, you want something else, maybe white, or maybe you want it to stand out. So you've got like hot pink or something. You can choose any color that you want right here. You also still have that general tab. So again, if you want to have a border around just this specific component, or maybe you want to have padding or margin on just this component, you can do that here as well. All right, so that's our input box there, but you've also got some other options like our date picker. So on the date picker here, again, you're going to have some of the same options. You can choose if you want this to be a required field or not. The options for mapping are going to be the event date, event custom properties, or form response only. So I've chosen the event date here for this one. If you are in the US, we also have a toggle here for popular US holidays. So if you want your client to be able to, see all of those holidays and say, oh, well, can't do it that day, it's Valentine's Day, or I can't do it that day, it's Memorial Day, whatever it happens to be, then you can have those on there so that they can see them as they're selecting their date. And then below that, again, you're going to have those options to change out those colors on a per component basis, and same thing with the general tab. Time input is going to be very similar. So you're going to have options here for you to set the value as, and the options are going to be any of the time fields that you see within the event. So all of those time fields that are on the details page, all of the different strike, conclude, when the bouquet delivery is going to be, etc. And you can name these according to those fields, or of course you can change that out as well. Going back to that stacked option here, just want to go ahead and show you what that will look like if you choose that option. So this is going to be a stacked option. And then you also have your side-by-side option over here. So just to kind of keep that in mind as the options there. All right, so going down here, I've also got these different text areas. So this is what I would do if I had kind of like an open-ended question where it really could be anything. So will your event include any floral structures? And if so, what are you looking for? What's the vision that you have for that? Also the overall vision for your wedding itself. Down below that is going to be a checkbox, but this can also be a toggle. So you can change this to either be a checkbox or a toggle here. And then, of course, you've got your field name and label. This one I have set to be a custom property. And when you set it as a custom property, you're also going to be able to choose what the name of that custom property will be. So right now I've got it set at personal items. And then you also have this option for if you want this to be checked or unchecked, toggled or not toggled by default. So if you think that the majority of people are going to say yes to this question, go ahead and put it as checked or toggled. And then if you think that the majority of people are probably going to say no to this or just skip over it, you can leave it unchecked. All right, going down here, these are my links. So right there, I've got my wedding page link and my Pinterest inspiration link. So what I was talking about earlier, these are also going to be using that input box, only I've got it as the type URL. And then of course, I have this one mapping to a custom property and I've named it Pinterest inspiration. Below that, you're going to see a series of other options here, such as like number of bridesmaids, number of grooms, things like that. Below is going to be our select multiple. So right here, I've got, please list out the items that you want to include in your event. Again, this is just kind of like an overarching, I'm just getting a feel for what you're wanting. You're still going to be doing that consultation with your client to fill in, like how many bridesmaids, how many groomsmen, etc. We want tall table centerpieces. Okay, what kind of tall table centerpieces? So these are just going to be like an overarching, what are you looking for type of question. In the select multiple option here, you're going to be able to, again, put that field name and label. Right now I have this one set as a form response only, but you can also do it as a custom property. And then for the options, you're going to have this options button here at the top, and you can go in and put any options that you want. So these are just some of the generalized ones that I thought of when I was making it. But of course you can go in and tailor this to whatever options you like. Rosemary, no, there's not dependent fields on this form as of right now, but definitely something that we're hoping to go for the future. For anybody that didn't see it, says, is there a way to hide/show questions based on how someone answers prior questions? So those are called dependent fields, and that is something that we hope to include in the future, but it's not something that's available now. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there as something that you've requested, Rosemary, and we'll be sure to let you know once it becomes available. All right, so you can add as many options though as you want here just by clicking on that add option button. And that's going to add an additional section here where you can put in your label and field name. All right, so that's kind of the overview of all of our different sections there. So again, these are the different options that you can pick from. Going back up to the top here, on the left-hand side, you're going to see a page list. So your form can be as many pages as you want. So right now I have it sectioned out into like all of my contact information, that's a section. All of the information about like the number of bridesmaids, grooms, etc., that's a section. Times and locations, that's a section. But I can also make this into multiple pages. So if I want like contact info on one page, then the next page is going to be all of the information about important times and locations. I can do that as well. To do so, I'm just going to click on that add page option here, and it's going to add another page here. It'll be unnamed page. And then again, I can just start over and put in any of the components that I want to add into this section. You can also edit any one of your pages here. So like, for example, it starts off with unnamed page. I can click on that pencil option here on the left-hand side, and I can adjust that information. Something else you'll notice here is that you can choose a background image for just this page. So I don't really have much of a use case in how you would want to do that, but if you have like a cover page, if you will, and then the next page, it has a different background, you can absolutely do that on a per page basis. And then of course, at the end, you're always going to have this thank you page. So you can customize this however you'd like. Right now, I've just got a heading that says thank you, but you can absolutely put more information there, such as we've received your information. A client, or excuse me, a representative will be reaching out to you to get more information and set up your initial consultation, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to put some more information in there, you can. And then once you're completely finished, you're going to go ahead and click that save button down at the bottom. And you can save this as a new version. You can also save this as a new template. So very similar to how we do on the worksheet, you can choose either or. So this one, I'm just going to put it as my first draft, and I'm going to go ahead and click that save button. Down here at the bottom, you're going to also have a preview button. And Jordan, while we're waiting for this to load, so Jordan says, will there be preloaded templates for forms? For example, something similar to your intake page, to just download and then we can adjust as needed. Yes, Jordan, everybody that gets started is going to start off with 2 different templates. So you're going to have the wedding intake form, which is what we're working with right now here on our webinar. And then you're also going to have a general intake form, which will be somewhat similar, but it'll have less questions. It's just very generalized or generic, if you will. Of course. All right, so this is going to be my form. I'll be able to come here This is also a great area where you can catch different things that you may have missed on the previous form. So for example, I set 2 of my fields to be a stacked, but everything else is a side by side. This gives me the opportunity to go back and change that. I can also choose to adjust any of this information. So if I don't like the order in which it presents or things like that. Additionally, in the upper left-hand corner, you have these options that will allow you to view your form in different devices. So one of the things that as a software company, we really like to focus on is how it looks on not only the computer, which is what we use every day, but the average person is going to be viewing like the proposal or the form on their phone or a tablet. It's just kind of the way that things are these days. So I can go in here and view what it's going to look like on a tablet, what it's going to look like on a phone, and just make sure that everything on there looks exactly as I want it to look in every aspect on any device. So that way, if your clients are primarily accessing from a phone or from a computer, you can go ahead and tailor this to fit more in line with that. I do also recommend for anybody who is not currently doing this, you can view on Google Analytics how your clients are interacting with your site and from which device they are accessing it from. So I would highly recommend to kind of see what the majority of your clients are looking at, and that way you can be sure that everything that they read is going to show exactly as they're viewing it. All right, so that's just kind of our preview area there. So let's talk about how you are going to be adding this onto your site. So I'm going to go up here into the top left-hand corner and click back into our form list. All right, and then once we're on this page here, I can go into this little eye icon, and that's going to bring me right over into my live form. From there, I'm going to take that link and then I can go add it onto my website. So maybe it's in a CTA, maybe it's using a photo, maybe you have a web developer that wants to format that in a completely different way. However you have your website set up, it's going to be link-based. So whether you have a CTA like button or a photo, etc., however you want to put that in there. And that's going to be how this will live onto your website. Additionally, so going back to our initial conversation when we first started talking about like the subdomains and being able to purchase a custom URL, this is where that's going to come into play. So at the very top here, right now, it's going to default to portal.details.flowers and then a series of like numbers, letters, etc. However, if I were to go in and purchase my own custom subdomain, it could say Brandy's Flowers or brandy.floral.events, and then that would be my link. And this is going to be true for your proposals and your forms, and then soon to also be your invoicing. So if you're interested in a custom URL, again, you can go to the menu option here and sign up for that. All right, so that's going to be our overview of the form today. To let everyone know, if you are interested in signing up for the form builder, on your main menu here, you're going to have an option that says premium features. When you click on that, you're going to have an option to hit form builder, and you'll be able to fill out our form to get started on the form list. The form builder is an added feature, so it's going to be your options are either $250 for the year or $25 per month. You do get a 14-day free trial though with this. So if you're not completely sure if you want to take the jump on this yet, we do have a 14-day free trial. You can get in there. You are able to use all of the features during that 14-day trial. So I highly recommend that you sign up for that and at least just go in and give it a try, and you'll probably love it and continue on with that. So I'm going to open up the floor for any questions that people might have or anything that you might want to go back over. So you can put that in the chat, or you can also turn off your mics turn on your mics and ask them there as well. All right, so Jordan says, is the form builder something that can be used automatically fill a worksheet, or is it just for our knowledge? Jordan, I think you came in a little late. but at the beginning of our webinar, we went over this option, which is going to be found in either this create new form area if it's your first one, or if you've already created it, you can go to this little piece of paper with a pencil, and you're going to have the option here to create an event. So if you want an event to automatically be created and be able to do that set value as field that we saw in our components to map their responses into different fields in details, you'll want to go ahead and set it up with the create event toggle to yes. And that way it will automatically fill that information into an event in details. Of course, yeah, my pleasure. Right, anybody else? Anybody else got questions? Go ahead and give it a couple minutes here. And as we're waiting to see if anybody else has questions, I do just want to mention that we are going to send a follow-up email. It's going to have our recap video from our class today. It's also going to have the link to sign up for the form builder. So if you want to do that and get started on your 14-day free trial. And then also if you want to check out our support center articles, we're going to include those in the follow-up email as well. All right, Rosemary says, can it automatically fill out info on the worksheet? For example, quantity of bridesmaids bouquets, or is it just for event details? So right now, the form builder mapping options are going to be for the client info, so like all of their contact info, emails, phone numbers, etc. And then the details page, so all of the important times, locations, custom properties, delivery information, all of that can be mapped in. On the worksheet, the only thing that maps to the worksheet right now is going to be your colors. So if your clients fill out that, use the color picker, then they'll be able to add those colors and that will automatically map to the worksheet. But as of right now, it's not going to fill in any of your quantities for individual line items or anything. Only because it's not dependent, or excuse me, it's not basically talking to your worksheet. So like not everybody has the same kind of fields or line items or layout as anybody else. So there's not like a direct one-to-one, if you will. All right. Well, if nobody else has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our class for today. You can always reach out to our team at support@detailsflowers.com, or you can utilize this chat bubble in the bottom left-hand corner of your account, and we'll be able to assist you there with any additional questions you may think of after we get off of our call today. But I thank you all for taking some time with us today to learn more about the form builder, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day.